take over the streets.
Cops aren't against protesters, they're against violence.
It's nuts! They're nuts! They know nothing!
Homeland Security basically gave money to the police department to pay for the lawsuits that were going to arise from people being abused by the police.
Civil protesters. These are people interested in committing serious criminal acts.
Tonight, protesters tell us they're just getting started.
I think it's important that we go on, redouble our efforts.
Those raids are aimed at a group called the RNC Welcoming Committee. Good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Brad Sadden.
And I'm Jessica Miles. The first raid happened last night at a St. Paul building police think is being used as a headquarters.
I'm reading the statement on behalf of the RNC Welcoming Committee. Assistant Police Chief Bostrom has talked about the St. Paul standard. And on the anniversary of last year's critical mass police riot, we saw its true face. The Ramsey County Sheriff's Department and the SPPD raided the RNC convergence space and detained over 50 people in an attempt to preempt planned protests at the RNC on Monday. Looking for items found in any Twin Cities house like jars, paints, and rags, this attempt to portray us as criminals and destroy our credibility has already backfired, as evidenced as the masses of people who have come to support us. We are now accused of simple fire code violations, which is outside of the scope of the Sheriff Department and clearly not just justified provocation for a forceful raid with guns being drawn. Children and elderly people were inside the Convergence Center when the police violently busted down the doors. The police claimed that the raid was executed according to protocol. However, the violence inherent in this action may only be a hint of the violence to be expected on Monday and beyond.
I saw these cars pull up with people with white shirts and bulletproof vests that said sheriff on them.
The cops busted in, and so we're upstairs in the office just, checking our email, writing stuff, talking, whatever, and we hear, get down, get down, get down, and we're like, for a brief second, all kind of look at each other and we're like, is there a fight? Like, what's going on downstairs? Are people fighting down there?
We heard this loud noise going on, and it was really surreal. It sounded like a fight going on, and kind of stood there for a second and realized that the sheriffs were raiding our space.
Rob actually sort of rallied everybody into the main room and was really good, at calming people's fears and being like, okay, we're going to, they're going to come up here, everybody, be on the ground. We're on the ground with our hands above our heads when they came upstairs.
I think the funniest thing was actually the cops were banging on this. They could have went up this front flight of stairs. This was an old theater with grand, stairs going upstairs, and instead they went around the back and came up through this little tiny hallway, and they're banging on this door, which is like a hollow core door, and they're like, Ramsey County, let us in.
There was this little kid and his mom, and everybody on the second floor was very conscious of the fact that Gabe was there and very worried. He was crying and he was terrified, and we were all very worried about what was going to happen to all of us, and particularly what might happen to him.
And I looked over at her and I said, hey, I feel really weak. I feel really, really vulnerable right now. I don't know what to do, but I'm terror. I feel very, very, very scared right now.
He and his mother were brought downstairs to near where I was, and he kind of had calmed down a little bit. He was still obviously upset. I work as a preschool teacher, and so I started to sing him a song that I had learned to try to help calm him down and lighten the atmosphere for him. So, knowing that it was traumatizing for me, how traumatizing was it going to be for this kid?
The cops went and started plastic cuffing everybody for our safety and for theirs, supposedly, as he is crying and in hysterics.
And then the cops told me to shut up and not to sing to the little kid.
Do you remember what we were doing on the ground? Yeah, they were singing, weren't they? Why do you think they were singing? Say it louder. He said to make me feel better.
We watched the sheriff take a lot of property out of the conversion center. The most bulky, largest amount of materials they took were political materials. We saw them taking many piles of newspaper pamphlets out and putting them in their vehicle and taking them away.
The convergent space, it was clear that they were targeting the organizing because what they took was organizational materials like literature and computers.
But it's really the most revealing about what the intent was of this raid, which was, again, to shut off completely legitimate political protests, because there's nothing that's more basic towards political organizing and more critical and accepted as being part of people's political rights is to distribute literature. And here we have, they use this raid as a pretext to confiscate all the political literature that people are going to hand out. So we're not talking about anyone going and doing something to hurt people or destroy property. We're talking about newspapers, the most basic, obvious legal thing that people have a right to hand to each other to express their political views. And the sheriff's department removed all these piles of newspaper pamphlets, which, yes, they still have, which have never been given back. So they were literally, directly cutting off people's ability to communicate their dissent.
But then was awoken immediately at around 7 in the morning to the door of our house being smashed down.
3 more raids today, all of them in South Minneapolis. In all, officers arrested 5 people thought to be leaders of the group.
The next morning I was woken up at about 7:30 to somebody pounding on my door, but it wasn't a cop, it was just a roommate, to say that Aaron and Monica's house was being raided and that the Food Not Bomb's house was possibly being raided as well.
Ramsey County deputies hit 3 homes today, arresting 5 people.
And the Food Not Bomb's house, which is the house where I live at, and they arrested my roommate Nathaniel. They arrested Monica, Aaron, and Garrett.
When police walked in with warrants in hand, 13 people were inside, but only one person, Nathaniel Secor, was arrested. Greiling says police trashed his house and walked away with computers, magazines, and cash.
And this was all happening so fast, but yet really in slow motion.
Given the craziness that big gatherings like this attract, the pre-convention raid on people suspected of planning civil disobedience is not what you would call a shocking police tactic. But things started looking more worrisome here after the local sheriff served search warrants at several locations looking for evidence of a conspiracy to riot and disrupt the convention.
I heard yelling and shouting and stomping, and then I heard Minneapolis Police Department, da, 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 and just scary yelling.
It was much the same scenario over at 3500 Harriet Avenue.
They destroyed it.
Vince Calora says his place was also tossed by cops. 20 people were inside, but no one there was arrested. Police, however, did confiscate duct tape, a machete, and phone numbers.
It seems I heard shouting, and there was a lock on my door, and I wasn't getting out of bed. I was lying face down in bed with my hands up like this, and they took their battering ram. They didn't knock and ask politely if I would unlock the door. They took their battering ram and they smashed through my door, and I took 3 hits.
Your bedroom door.
My bedroom door.
I got up and I told all of my friends, I was stay inside the house, stay in here, they can't come in. And I just figured that they were in normal police uniforms, regular police who just wanted us to go outside while they searched the house, and that they were yelling because they're police and police usually yell, but that it was just going to be really normal. So I get up and I have my hands up and I say, okay, some of us are going to be coming down. A few of us are sleeping up here, we're coming.